Hello and welcome to The Real Bottom Line. The podcast is for entrepreneurs, featuring entrepreneurs, where we talk about how to build, scale, and sell your business. My guest today is Christine Tolton. She is the CEO of Red Cat Marketing, and she has been helping clients for over 20 years with all their marketing needs. And I think we're going to have a really interesting conversation today. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm so excited to be here and I'm really looking forward to chatting.
Oh, this is awesome. Okay, cool. Now, we usually start out with, have you always owned your own business? Like, or did you start out corporate and move your way in? Like, how did you get to where you're at now?
Yeah, it's a great question. The origin story. So I did not start out this way. So I started, we'll just say a few years ago, and we'll just leave it at that. And I
You don't need to put timelines. It's
don't
true.
need to put numbers on it. I worked for several different advertising agencies, large global ones, a few independents, and since day one, I've loved the ad game. I've loved it. I feel it in my bones. I love it. So I had I was doing a lot of good work there. And then I went one time to the client side, or I call it the dark side. And I was working for a large, very large bank, and I was director of strategy for the wealth management and small business. And I realized in there that I was not a client. I was an agency person.
Mm,
I we would have, when I was client side, our agency would come in to present or pitch or whatever, and I was trying to help them. So I realized maybe I'm on the wrong side of the table. Anyhow, during that time, I also got pregnant. I went on mat leave. When I was on mat leave, I still had plans to come back to work and work my 70 hours a week with my newborn. And then towards the end of my mat leave, I started to feel a little bit uneasy, like, how exactly will this work out? So during that time period, I had a colleague who was working for another agency and had a client who needed kind of some help. They were doing a kind of a market readiness report, and she said, we're swamped. Can you just do this for me? And we'll pay you X amount. And I'm like, sure, I can do that. So spent a few days, did that. That was great. She says, here's another one, and we have a few more coming up. And I'm like, okay, that's great. And then I started thinking, interesting. Maybe I could still do the work I love, but do it, not like for myself.
yeah,
And that was 20 years ago this month.
that is
So
amazing.
this month we are celebrating 20 years. And rather ironically, I was out for dinner just a couple weeks ago with that same person who gave me my very first job. And I said, do you remember when? And she said, yes, I do. So that's how I started. That's how Red Cat Marketing was born 20 years ago. It's born out of necessity. I guess choice,
Mm.
and but necessity, because I wanted to have kind of that work. Ironically, I wanted to have that work-life balance. I
Oh,
went
it's
into
like
it
every
very.
entrepreneur has. Yeah.
I know, I went into it very naive. I'm like, look at me, and it was great. It was great when my kids were younger, and then the agency just evolved from there.
What were some of the key lessons you learned along the way from when you worked for other people? Because I often think that
Mm.
what I saw others do, some of it I wanted to copy, and some of it I'm like, I will never do it that way. What were some of the
Oh,
things that you said, I will never do it that way?
oh, that is interesting. I know what I've learned since I've started,
Yep.
but I can't quite think of things that I said I would never do. I worked for some pretty, well, maybe timesheets was one of those things. It's like the ad agency kind of like bane of our existence. And
Yep.
yeah, we still don't do
Nice.
timesheets, but I don't know. That one I'd really have to ponder. I think I could tell you kind of the lessons I've learned in my 20 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
What were the top three lessons you've learned then?
Sure. So I would say probably, I was going to say number one, but I'm not sure. There's a few competing for number one, but adaptability.
Okay.
So it really is. So market trends change, consumer trends change, tactics change. We didn't have Snapchat. We weren't, we were on Snapchat 20 years ago, right? So,
Yeah.
and it's not even from now to 20 years ago, but it's from now to even last year.
Mm.
So we just did a webinar a few weeks ago, or I guess it was the end of October, a month and a half ago, on the shifts we've seen in consumer behavior just in the last year. So this is really, and this last year, the pace of change that we have now is exponential to what it was, 5, 10, 15 years ago. So it's really about being kind of open and understanding that the world changes. And when we see these shifts in behavior, that affects how people buy. And therefore, that affects how we market, that affects how we communicate. And the things that people care about, that influences their buying decisions, whether you're B2B or B2C. So you always have to be aware of that. And that changes year to year. But it also applies, so to things like AI.
Mm.
So a lot of people are scared of it. I feel like either you love it or you're just like, oh my gosh. And you don't understand it, but you really need to embrace it because AI is here and you have to understand how you're going to make it work for your particular business. And I actually heard someone say, which I thought was interesting, AI won't replace you, but someone who knows how to use AI will. So,
Ooh.
yeah, I know. I wish I could remember who said that. It wasn't me, but it did, it stuck with me. So I think, we use AI and we're very thoughtful and we're strategic about how we use it. But to not like to just say no, we're not going to do it, we're not going to embrace it. I think that's like that we'd be very negligent to ourselves and to our clients and to kind of to culture in general. So adaptability is kind of a really big thing. um the other
Can
thing.
I ask one more question about
Sure,
it
yeah.
before we move on? I've kind of gotten a dislike for the word pivot. Is adaptability pivoting or is it
um
just shift? Like, how would you relate that word for people?
sure, and that's such a great question. So in my mind, pivot is more of a larger change
Mm.
as opposed to, I think adaptability is about, it's very rare that we have a large change. Now, having said that, we all went through, a global pandemic. So I would say we did probably have to pivot more
Yes.
quickly, but
Hmm.
then we also had to adapt to those changes in behavior. So we could not go into retail stores. We could not, unless you were going to get groceries, that sort of thing. So now you were buying online. But there were some things that were easy to buy online, but then there were other things like think about buying a car. How do we do that?
Yeah.
We like to touch it and feel it and drive it and that sort of thing. So that's where we had to adapt and we had to change our mindset. We had to change our thinking about
Yes.
how we did it, which also leads me to one of, I guess, the other big, kind of lessons learned. It's about creativity.
Hmm.
So when we hear creativity, we often think of, kind of the images or the words, which are absolutely, that's just part of it. But it's not just the execution, it's how you approach the work. So, for example, we work with a lot of, uh, I guess, earlier stage companies.
Yeah.
And if aggressive growth is a strategy, how do we do that? So, the obvious answer is we're going to sell more. But maybe we don't necessarily need to sell more, or maybe we add a price increase, or maybe we add a new product or service. Maybe we acquire a new company. So there's so many different ways to go about doing that. It's just, you know, it's interesting, when you do have a brainstorming exercise and you say, okay, how are we going to do this? And someone says, well, obviously we do it this way. So then we say, okay, now you can't do it that way. What's the next way you do it? Well, we would do it like this then. Okay, you can't do those two ways. Now what's the next way you do it? And on and on and on. And it really, creativity is a muscle and it applies right across the board. So what we do is we try to focus on what we need to do and then recognize that there's multiple ways that, that can be done. We have a few non-negotiables, has to be superior client service, sound strategy, delivering results, that sort of thing. But, who says there's only one path to get somewhere?
Right. Do you here I am with my dictionary again. So, how does the word innovation match up to creativity?
Oh yeah, that's interesting. So I would say innovation, and this is just my, personal viewpoint on this. I would say innovation, I don't know, creativity I think is an approach, and innovation feels more like a thing.
An outcome.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. So I don't know. See, creativity in my mind is just about how we go about doing it.
Nice.
And and I love to challenge, like I mean, and challenge in a good way. And we do this with our team all the time. Okay, how else are we going to do this? How else can we get this done? What else can we do? And I know it again, as I said, it's a muscle. And the more you use it, then the more it starts just becoming natural.
Mm. Is there something that you did that you might throw into the mistake arena or that you learned from, or something that happened that you go, oh my gosh, I hated it at the time, but it's been pivotal for my growth because I learned from it?
I think I'm not sure if I would do it as say a mistake necessarily, but I
Yep.
guess kind of lesson learned.
Yeah.
So when we first started working, as an agency, we took on all types of projects.
Mm.
And I think it came from a place of excitement and passion, and I want to do all the things.
Yep.
So I'm the type of person that has a thousand ideas before I've even rolled out of bed, right? So I
Yep.
think it was came from that, but then we niche down, and this is such an interesting conversation I have with a lot of people who are kind of at an earlier stage than I am. It's not about you don't have to be doing all the things. It's pick what you are really good at. So we started to focus, we were good at a lot of things, but we looked at, what are we good at? What do we like doing? What is fun for us to do?
Yeah.
And where can we be profitable? Because we are running a for-profit business.
Yes.
So we really kind of niche down, and like we are 100% a strategy shop now,
Mm.
and it's what I love to do. It's what our team loves to do. So I would say that was kind of one of the big lessons learned. And then the other one is outsource if you can. So
Okay.
I used to do, and I shudder to think of it. You'll get a kick out of this, but I think we talked about this maybe previously. But I used to do a lot of try to do my bookkeeping,
Yeah.
and it was because I thought, well, I'm a business owner. This was in the beginning. I'm a business owner. You do all these things, and I should know this, and this is a skill I should have.
Right.
It was so incredibly painful.
How
And
bad did you procrastinate?
pardon me?
How bad did you procrastinate?
Oh, horribly, horribly. And
It's actually a good sign of what you should be delegating is something you procrastinate on.
so it was interesting because I should have done it like way earlier, but that was a big lesson. But somebody
Mhm.
said to me, they said, what is, kind of what's your hourly rate? I'm like, well, my hourly rate is X. And
Yes.
how many hours do you spend doing, your accounting and that sort of thing? Well, we spend this number of hours. Okay, so here's kind of what that worth is. Now, what if you applied that to a project? And what if you were,
Yeah.
and how much would it cost
Yeah.
to hire that out? So I think sometimes in the very beginning you do have to do everything
Oh,
because
absolutely.
you're trying
Yeah.
to be scrappy and that sort of thing, but when it gets to a certain point, so I would say like outsourcing and recognize when you need to outsource and what type of person you need. So our that was just, I think, probably a big lesson for us.
Now, when you built your team, did you start mostly with independent contractors or did you go right to employment or and if you start with the independent contractors, how do you know when you want to bring them on staff?
I truly think it depends on every situation. It depends on what country you're in. It depends on where your clients are. So, for example, are your clients in the US? Are your clients in Canada? Are your clients in Europe? That sort of thing. And where does it make sense? I also think it depends on the type of work that you're doing.
Mm.
So so we were remote before we had to be remote. And we were very, very much, I've always been a believer that you don't have to do your job between the hours of 9 to 5. You
Right.
do your job when it makes the most sense for our clients, for what, for the business and for you.
Yeah.
And that's part of, so if you write strategy best very early in the morning, then you do it then. Whatever kind of makes the most sense. But back to your question, I in terms of when do you bring on as employees or when do you not, I don't know that I'm most qualified to answer that. Well, just because I think there's financial implications and there's like HR implications. Our team, though, so uh, I believe that I always hire people smarter than me.
Yeah.
So I hire for attitude and potential because I believe skills can be taught. Our team now is the best we've ever had, and I feel blessed that I
Mm,
get to work with them every day. And when we talk about, kind of business lessons learned, one of the big things is that it must be fun. So we can do good work, we do amazing work, we deliver results, but we have to have fun. And there was a time a couple years ago when we were working with a client and the team, like, I mean, it doesn't mean every single day is going to be fun because, some days I still have to look at accounting, right? So those aren't fun days, but over time, generally, and there was a time a couple years ago where the team was not thriving. And it was, so we made some tough decisions with clients because the team was not thriving. And that to me, I mean, I built this so we can, for a number of reasons. And one of them is, we can do good work and we can have fun while doing it.
I feel like I think that's an excellent approach. I feel sometimes we get locked in with clients who give us a lot of revenue, and as a result, we are hesitant to maybe make those tough decisions because of the money.
Yeah,
But
it's
I
it's
suspect the money
hilarious.
flows when you're having fun. It flows better.
So I would say though, in the earlier years of the business, we had probably some clients that maybe we should have sunsetted. Not a lot, but like just one
Let
or two.
sunset it.
Yeah, but that we probably could have sunsetted a bit earlier. And again, we didn't. We weren't quite sure, and it's again part of the lessons learned, right?
Mm. I'd love to shift into some of your expertise. It's just shining through. So now I must go there. And if our listeners are thinking about 2025 marketing, they own their business. They're like, oh my gosh, what should I focus on in 2025? What would you tell them, and give them a couple hows if you can?
Ah, yes, such a great question. So, and this is such a great time of year for us to be having this conversation because one of the first things would be a marketing audit. So
Mm,
we are very, very bullish on that. So you must do an audit to be able to understand what you've done in the past. So therefore, you know what you should be doing in the future.
right,
So a marketing audit, so at the end of the year, kind of Q4, is a great time to be doing this. You're looking at all of your marketing from, kind of the last 12 months. You're looking at here's what my objectives were at the beginning of the year, not just your marketing objectives, but your business objectives. So that is
right,
really, really important
yes,
because if your marketing all worked, but you didn't reach your business objectives, there was a disconnect. So
right,
you need to make sure you're looking at both of them, but you're looking at, the actual, what were the KPIs, what were the results, what was the messaging that we put out, what was, how did the creative work, did we bring on the right type of, we're talking about clients and
yeah,
customers, do we bring on the type that we want?
yeah,
Did we have once we brought, depending on your business, once we brought customers on or clients on, did we continue to nurture them or did they just buy one thing and be gone? So
right,
you're kind of looking at all of that. So we do this for our clients on the regular. We have looked at, so we did a marketing audit for a client. We looked at, all of her campaigns and everything that she had done. And we actually found money left on the table that they had not, just from not doing follow through, just by making a few little tweaks, that
mm,
we were able to actually in or decrease paid spend and increase return. So
Hey.
yeah, and it was actually super interesting, but you only know that from doing a deep dive, right? And it's hard to do it when you're living it every day. It's definitely hard to do it.
You're hugging the tree, as I see, and you need someone to help you look at the forest.
Yeah, so what we do is when we do that full comprehensive report, and then we give a 30, 60, 90 day. So
Yeah.
here's what, because the worst thing that we can do is write a strategy, do an audit, give it to a client, and then it sits on the shelf.
I feel you on that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we say, here's what you can do in 30 days that will make a difference. Here's what you can do in 60 days. Here's what you can do in 90 days. But you also can do this yourself. So if you have the capacity and whatever, you can do this yourself and kind of, consider some of the things I talked about. And then also, just use kind of a stop, start, continue framework. It's a
Mm,
pretty basic framework, but it works. What should I stop? What should I start doing? And what can I continue? Maybe make a few tweaks and that sort of thing. So, if we're talking about 2025 planning, before you even do your 25 plan, look at what you did in 24.
I love that. Could we go for a second into the KPIs, which are key performance indicators? When it comes to a marketing audit, could you give some examples of a KPI that I could be looking at?
Sure. And it really depends on, on what the campaign is. But if
Yeah.
we're talking about, if we're talking about email as an example, so a key performance indicator could be an open rate.
Yeah.
Now, an open rate, you don't want to look at any of these like independently, because an open rate means that your subject line was compelling enough.
Right.
Now, it also comes from your brand too, of course, which
Mhm.
is a whole other thing, but your subject line was compelling enough. But open rate's a key performance indicator. Then when they open the email, then you're looking at a click-through rate.
Yes.
So somebody read through your content, they clicked on a button, they clicked on a link, they clicked on an
It
image,
took
that
an
sort of thing.
action of some sort.
Yeah, they took an action of some sort. So that is a really good, so that means your email did what it was supposed to do. But then you're looking at assuming it went to your website. Let's just say it went to your website, that click through. Then you're looking at the metrics on your website. So did
Mm,
someone go there and bounce right away? Meaning that
how
maybe
long do they stay there?
the content from your email didn't match up with what was on your website. So actually, another
That's a
fun
pet peeve
fact,
of mine, actually. When I
pardon me,
get that's a pet peeve when I click a button and then I have to search for what I want to find. I don't
so
understand that.
we just did in a different marketing audit. That was one of the that was the only tweak the client, not the only tweak, but the one of the big tweaks the client made was making sure her social and her web were integrated. She's like, but it's saying the same thing. I'm like, but from their standpoint, from a consumer standpoint, it's a totally different,
Yeah.
it's a totally different brand and that sort of thing. She just changed that messaging, changed that brand image, and then all of a sudden, she's like, I can't believe how much my numbers increase. So it's talking
Yeah.
about some of those little tweaks. But so that would be, so you're looking at what's the bounce rate. You're looking at what is on the website, what's the path that someone took. So, okay, they read through this landing page that it went to, then they checked the customer testimonials. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And then they went and looked at a case study. I'm making this up. And then they purchased, right? So you can
Yeah.
see kind of what that path is. So when we're talking about marrying marketing with business objectives and we're talking about KPIs, you need to look at it in totality
And context and
and
everything.
context. Yeah.
That's amazing. So we get our KPIs. We're doing our start, stop, continue. Can we just spend a couple minutes on the trends you see for next year and the change in behavior that you did in your webinar? Like, what are
Oh,
the things that as a business owner, I really should be aware of?
hmm. Yeah, and this is where you're gonna have to stop me because I feel like I could probably go on and on and on. So,
And timer on, go.
yeah, exactly. Here comes the hook. So one of the big things that we have seen, so we've seen for the past couple of years, maybe I'm trying to think, maybe 3-ish years, but then really in 2024, is overall global trust is waning.
Mm,
So there is a general level of discontent, anxiety. So if we think, pre-COVID or pre the pandemic, that it was here. Then all of a sudden we had the pandemic, and then our level kind of went here. And then with everything that's happened post pandemic, so think of, recession, depending on the country you're in, think of um, unemployment. Um, we've had 70 countries globally have had an election in 2024. That is half of the world's population. So if you think of half of the world's population did not know who was going to lead their country, and
Mm,
you know, there's a lot of countries where it's been very, we've never had such opposing feelings
right.
on who is going to be, in a leadership role. We have that in the US, we have it in Canada, we have it in India, we have it in all sorts of places.
France, we have it in Germany. Yeah, it's everywhere.
It is. So consumers are unsure, they're anxious. We have high interest rates. We have, you know, recession, no recession. Wait, we're coming out of a recession. Wait, Bitcoin's high. Like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Seriously. So just this, there's this one report we look at, it's the Global Trust Barometer, and global trust is generally waning. So what this means is that when we are talking to consumers, we need to recognize that. So we don't want to make everything sunshine and unicorns and rainbows. We need to reinforce comfort. And we need to not message trust like trust us, trust us.
Yeah.
We need to prove it. We need to show it. So show it, don't tell it. So that's kind of one of the big trends, or it's not even a trend, but one of the big shifts we've seen.
So
So
how does that translate? So it's like it seems like a lack of stability leads to more distrust. So does that change buying behavior? Do I need more information to make a decision? Or am I just not doing it? Like,
So
what?
great question, and it kind of leads to the second shift we have,
Yeah.
which would be around, generally we have now a stronger preference for value and affordability.
Mm,
So notice I don't say low price, because low price is one thing, but it's value. And we all put our own, I guess, lens on what value means, because
yeah.
what's going to be valuable to you is going to be, different than what is valuable to me, depending on where I am and how much money I make, where I live in the world. Do I have kids? No kids? What stage of life am I at? That sort of thing. But we really have a strong preference for that. And I actually just read this week that in Canada, Canadian consumers are now less brand loyal than they ever were. So typically,
Mm,
Canadians have been very brand loyal. So, you can't get me to change from my Timmy's or my Starbucks or my Balzac's or my whatever it is.
yeah.
But now Canadian consumers, and it's probably applies to the US as well, but I haven't looked at these stats, is we're less brand loyal because we want value, we want affordability. And it does affect the decisions we make, because if you think, for example, so you may not choose to, so a decision that you have to make, I'm trying to pick my words carefully, you may not be happy with that decision that you had to make, but you made it because you need to have more money in your pocket. You need to be able to feed your kids. You want to take your kids to hockey, just using that as an example. So, therefore, you made a decision to choose to do something one way, even though you maybe didn't feel that. But
Yeah.
so this is how, if we're talking about marketing, so it's about communicate. It doesn't mean that, like, if you're a higher price product or a luxury product, doesn't mean you have to,
Mm,
drop your prices, but you need to understand where consumers are coming from. So you talk about what that means. What's that exchange that they're
mm,
getting for what they're paying for? Does that
yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense. Interesting. And is there a third trend that we need to be aware of, Christine?
Yeah, I would say the which is really interesting, and talking about the two we just did. So we talked about global trust, we talked about the preference for value and affordability. It's about simplicity. So
Mm,
we have seen this actually for the past few years, and I just love this shift and this trend, but it's yearning for the way things used to be, the
oh,
way it used to be. So what's interesting though is this is applying, across all age groups, even more so though in that kind of that 20 to 45 or that 30 to 55 age group, they want it to be the way it used to be, even though they don't really know what the way it used to be is. And it wasn't necessarily always better the way it used to be.
Right.
But we do look at it, we look back with a little bit of rose-colored glasses, and so it's interesting though. So we talk about nostalgia. So I
Mm,
think nostalgia is a really, really powerful marketing tool if it makes sense for your brand. So you always have to put that through the filter of your brand. But if you think of some of the, if you think of even some of the like the marketing that's out now, if you think of, you know, there's a lot that is tapping into nostalgia, tapping into that feeling or kind of that throwback. Like, think of, we just looked at for a client, I did a deep dive in particular to their segment, and it was talking about, kind of timelessness. And the
yeah.
focus was not on the product, the focus was on the memory of the grandma and the granddaughter and that relationship that they would have, and that the granddaughter would be wearing what the grandmother had had. So
Right.
it's that feeling of that nostalgia and that warmth. But it makes sense if you think about what we talked about with global trust, right? And
Mm,
if we think about interest rates, if we think about homelessness, if we think about, all of those things,
yes.
why wouldn't we be yearning for that?
Okay. Is this why everybody buys matching pajamas?
Right? Christmas pajamas.
Just wondering.
Yeah, yeah. No, it is, I mean, it is really, it's just, it's so interesting. This is why, I mean, I think I have the very best job in the whole world, and I love look like this is where I can spend so much time,
Yes.
and my team knows because I'm always sending them trend reports saying, "Hey guys, look at this. Look at this. Look at this. This could have implications here. Here's what we could think of here." So, it's just, to me, it's fascinating, that consumer behavior.
Well, and I think maybe what your unique ability is to be able to take that data and move it into something that's actionable. Because the data is everywhere for all
It
of
is.
us. But it's how
Mhm.
do you action on those
Agreed.
trends that you're identifying in terms of how you're approaching the market and all that kind of stuff.
What's the so what? We call it the so what.
Yeah.
Right. So if you say global trust is waning, well, so what? So what does that mean? So what does that mean overall, as a society? But then specifically, what does that mean to your segment, to your business, to your brand, and specifically where you want to go in 2025? So you kind
Mm.
of see how you can stitch all of that together.
Ooh, Christine, our time is coming to a close, and I've just enjoyed it so much. Is there something I haven't asked you that I should have?
Oh my goodness, I don't know. I don't think so. I would just say, I guess, if people are, don't be scared of marketing, right? So I know that there's always a lot of questions about marketing. And
Mhm.
by the way, anybody can send me a DM and I'm happy to answer any sort of questions about
Nice.
marketing. But one of the best things you can do is test everything. So we are big believers in A/B testing. So we test absolutely everything that goes out, from emails to social ads to paid digital to
Mm.
messaging to,
Yep.
even the colors of a button, that sort of thing. So, test it and look at the data. So, I mean,
Get
what,
curious.
pardon me?
Get curious.
Oh, yes, I'm very curious about all the things.
How do people get a hold of you, Christine?
Through Instagram or LinkedIn. So either way, and as I said, I love to chat about marketing. So I encourage people to reach out, and yeah, we can
Well,
talk further.
thank you so much, Christine. I think the real bottom line here today is really about being adaptable and creative because that will help you with the trends and everything else as well. Thanks so much, Christine.
Thank you for having me. It was wonderful.